Hello, my friend. This is the second video that I make about child molesters. I've shared the first video below in case you haven't watched it yet. This time, I would like you to listen to child molesters, how they operate, how they lie, how they behave in their community or at work. These videos have been made by a Harvard professor. Her name is Anna Salter. As I have promised, in the future I will have an interview with her to talk about her books and the work that she has been doing. I would like to start with an extract, one fragment of an interview with Patrick. He's a young minister from a Methodist church. He has been accused of child abuse, and it's interesting that he's an outstanding member of his community. He has, in principle, no criminal record. The question is he guilty? Let's listen to him.
When he did tell, and when it became a bigger issue, when I was investigated, the head of the department of my county told me, he said, "You have nothing to worry about." He said, "We can tell from the very beginning that this is all a big scheme," and it was dropped almost as quickly as it came about. I was caught twice before I was incarcerated. Really, it wasn't being caught, it was I was told on twice before being incarcerated. They were not believed the first two times. I had many people, counselors, church leaders, leaders of the community, to come up and stand in my defense several times in those occasions. And it was simply just totally disbelieved. Even the second time, well, here he goes again. This young man trying to help unfortunate children, and they're turning against him. And I was even told as much as say, I had a minister come to me and tell me, he said, "Patrick, what's going on is you'll run across it many times. People you try to help will stab you in the back." He said, "Roll with the punches, stick with it. You're doing a good job." He said, "And in the end, you'll be blessed for it."
So, what if you have a great reputation within your community? It's quite unlikely that people will believe in the accusations that you are making. So, this is really, really serious. You don't know what to do, where to turn to when you are in a situation like this. It's interesting that in order to justify or to help this guy who is in trouble, people turn to religious arguments. It's part of the Christian life. You will be blessed for what you are doing.
And indeed, in the eyes of everyone else, I was a good kid. I grew up making good grades in school, went to a nice college. All of that just added to the double life.
I don't know if you remember what I said on my first video, that one common characteristic is that those psychopaths, sadists, child molesters lead a double life. There's a world of difference between what you can see when you are with this person, or how they behave at work. They could be very functional, successful, and even they might be charitable, but you don't know what they do in their private lives. This is the case of this child who was famous for his kindness and charity.
They seem to want to believe in the good that exists in all people. I consider people wanting to believe that these kind of things don't happen, that children shouldn't be molested, and that it doesn't happen. And it really doesn't happen in my community and in my church. And because of that, it was easy for me to convince them, all the more with my good deeds that I had done, with the actions that I had presented the members of the congregation. I think that they want to believe in people, and because of that, you can easily convince with or without convincing words. They said, well, we know this young man. He has been in our community all of his life. We know his parents, his grandparents, his aunts, his uncles. This is not something that he would do. This is not something that goes along with the behavior that we see him in and day out. And that was true, because I was very careful that they did not see that behavior day in and day out.
I forgot to mention that this guy has abused more than 53 children, and he has touched even more. But for me, it's very important what he claims, that people don't want to believe that this happens. And no matter your social condition, your where you live, in all social classes, there are people who have these perversions. Let's do this experiment. What if you address this topic in a meeting when you are with your friends, with your family, with your co-workers? Do you think that, I understand that it is very touchy and people don't want to talk about that, but I'm convinced that it's something that, whether we like it or not, we have to address it in order to invest in prevention. We take for granted that we know everything that we need to know about this topic, but in reality, we have several biases and vulnerabilities, and they constitute a great threat to us. In the case of religious people, when you have a great reputation, they want to see the best in you. Remember what I said on the first video, that when we see personality traits, we tend to assume that that's truly their personality, when it could be a facade, when it could be just a strategy of social interaction that they are using for private reasons. And we cannot forget that this exists, and what is at stake is the integrity of the most vulnerable people. And I'm convinced more and more that there should be talks about this at the schools, on the media. It should be addressed. Now let's listen to this guy who is a rapist. He's going to say why it's so easy to fool people.
To be kind, to show kindness, especially in public and where there are more than one present. To put this facade on constantly. You wear it like clothes every day. You smile even when you don't want to smile. You don't feel like smiling. When you're hurting inside, you push that down and you smile anyway, and you're polite and you're kind. And you say the right things. You say the things that you think people want to hear.
I keep thinking about this phrase. You say what people want to hear. So, in other words, you play a role based on the personality traits that the people you are with have.
That you would like to hear. You exercise that sympathy.
I need to say that these perpetrators, these offenders, they were accused several times, but those accusations were ruled out. Nobody believed in the victims because they had great reputations. So how did they end up in prison? I don't know if he mentions, but the point is that they found child pornography in their phones, in their computers, and that's how they ended up finding out that they had a double life. Now let's listen to this guy. This man is a sadist. He used to abuse not children on the streets, but also his own child. And he was especially abusive against his wife.
Society is easy to fool. Extremely easy to fool. And I say that because of how long I have fooled society and how long I've fooled people. I've been fooling people for well over 25 years. And people have believed what I told them. Nobody around me knew what I was doing. Nobody around my community knew that I was such a violent individual in the home. If they did, they never said anything. But I don't believe they ever knew. Because I was completely and totally different outside of the house once I left the home. I feel more that I led a triple life. I was one way at home, I was one way at work, and I was a different way in the community. When I was at home, I was a molesting monster. I would rape and molest. When I was in the community, I was more of a stalker. I would be stalking people, stalking children, looking for victims. When I was more with my employers or the in crowd that I was in, it was something, I was completely different as, I'm the perfect individual, have a good paying job, drive a nice car, dress nice, and go to a lot of high class, fancy places. And this is the life, this is what I would portray to the people that I wanted them to see. My friends, my employers, business associates. This is what I would portray to them.
Rephrase that. There was.
Now let's listen to this pedophile, 30 years old. He has an 18-year history of molesting children. He's especially aroused by male children between the ages of 9 and 13. He has been an athletic director at a school. He identified vulnerable children. And how many victims did he abuse? Let's listen to.
No boundaries for me. No place was off limits. No time was off limits. And no set of circumstances was off limits. At any time that I saw an opportunity to get what I wanted, which was to rape or molest, I took advantage of that. There were times that I raped in a car with the parents in the front seat, me in the back seat with the children.
I know how outrageous this sounds, but I have to confess that I have heard other child molesters who did the same. I work in a prison once a week. I've been doing this for 1 year, and after talking to them, I realized at what point parents manage to trust men around their children. It could be a family member, or it could be for someone who supports the family.
The child would feel such a bond of trust that the child would decide, okay, I'd like to go to sleep. I'd manipulate the child and lay him across the seat and molest the child with my hand on his penis, by forcing my hand on his penis while the parents were in the front seat. My nephew, I raped him for a period of 9 years. Raped and molested him for a period of over 9 years.
Remember that what I said on my previous video, that very few children who have been molested turn to authorities or they report it to their parents, because they are especially confused. Their logic is, if this man is very close to my parents, he has good deeds, how is it possible that he might be in a certain way inflicting pain on me? A child doesn't understand it, he's nervous, he might experience guilt and shame and confusion. So it's very, very difficult for a child to process this.
And very few cases did I rape him in which no one was in the house. I have 11 male rape victims. I have one female rape victim, and I have approximately 1,250 male molesters.
1,250 victims, okay? Most child molesters that I have worked with, they had more than 100 victims, and they ended up in prison just for one. I remember a man who told me that one of his victims reported to the teacher, because this teacher at the school was talking about sexual misconduct, that the teacher said, nobody can touch your your body. And this child molester ended up in prison, but it's I know it's outrageous, and it's even more outrageous that just a minority end up in prison, because most of them, as I said earlier, are not reported. Now let's listen to this man. He has been a coach, and he's going to tell us what characteristics he identified in order to find potential victims.
Characteristics that you look for in children before molesting them?
In children, yes, but more I also looked at their families. If I thought the father was a threat, I would not approach the child. If I thought that the child had friends that he would tell, I would not approach him. If I thought the child had friends that were in the same capacity he was, I would approach him. For the simple fact that if I could molest him, I could lure him into believing, grooming him into believing that he would enjoy it. And therefore, I could manipulate him into having his other friends come and be molested by me as well.
So perhaps a child that doesn't really have a whole lot of friends, maybe not really a strong family, things like that.
Yes, no spiritual values, weak in education, needs help in many ways, even from split parenting, has a mother who may be having problems with the family, well, here comes superhero in to help out, wow, well, thank you very much. No problem. You ever need me to take him away for the night so you can have a night out? No problem. It works.
I know how disturbing these videos might be. People refuse to believe in malevolence. It's easier to believe that all people are good. We don't want to see this side of reality. And I am convinced that if we don't accept this reality, we are more vulnerable. There's no hope to stop it. They capitalize on our vulnerabilities, on our biases, and we need to learn from them so that we can report it. We need to talk to our children. We need to raise awareness about this in our society. It's a traumatic experience to be a victim of child abuse, as we know. And I am making next video about prevention, and I want you to share it. I want you to address this topic, that might have a conversation within your family, with your friends, with your colleagues about this topic. How can we prevent? How is the profile of a child molester? To what point are we really serious about this? Well, I hope that you have, I don't know if the word is enjoy, but I hope that you have learned something. Subscribe to this video and share it with those, not just who have children, for everyone. Every time I have the chance to see a child on the street, I talk to their parents and I tell them, careful. Many women might say, oh, it's kind of creepy that you talk about this. You might attract child offenders. No, it's about prevention. It's about being aware of this. And it's kind of selfish for me to say, of course, it's serving, show you videos, to talk about this. I really know that. But for me, it's somewhat selfish and self-centered to tell you, because I don't like it, I don't want to address it. I don't want to talk about prevention. It's about vulnerable children. And it's something that happens everywhere, in all places in our societies. I want you that you learn something. So don't forget to subscribe and to watch my next video.